Welcome, everybody, to the second episode of The Big Review. My name is Eric Young. I'm the CEO and Creative Director of EYStudios. We're producing this in partnership with BigCommerce, the most customizable SaaS platform on the planet. I'm joined here by Grace Martinez. Grace, how's it going?
Going great. Glad to be here.
Grace, let's introduce you on the next slides. Everybody can see your mug, my mug, as well as Evan Perkins. Evan, are you there?
I am here, Eric. Thank you.
All right, Evan, welcome to The Big Review. You're a senior account executive over at BigCommerce. What does that mean, Evan? What do you do over there?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So I won't use euphemisms. I'm a sales rep here at BigCommerce. My job really, I think, is the best job at BigCommerce. I get to talk with people who are considering us and just help them figure out if we are or are not going to be a good fit for whatever particular project they're exploring. So there's a lot of variety. And we have a lot of opportunity to get to know some pretty interesting people.
Very good. Evan, what did you do before BigCommerce? What led you to Big, and what's your background?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have sort of a weird background. In a previous life, I was an inner city minister at a church called Scum of the Earth in Denver, Colorado. It was a great season of life. That was in my mid-20s. I did leave honorably, it's worth noting. And moved to Austin, Texas, and got back into sales. I had previously worked at IBM out of college in a sales role. So coming back into the kind of private sector, sales is the only thing I have done and like to do. And I found BigCommerce just through some mutual connections about 3 years ago. And I've been here ever since and really been enjoying it.
Very good. Well, Evan, again, we appreciate you being part of the show. I got a lot to cover in this hour. Grace, what's kind of an overview of the sites? What are some things that you can...
I think one of the biggest things we're looking at today is how to almost like market yourself when you're selling as an e-commerce brand and make sure that you're distinguishing yourself among your competitors and making that the selling point almost.
That's right. Well, we want to cover a little bit more of what to expect for anybody that's new to the Big Review. First thing is, remember, these are not meant to be full reviews. We could literally spend the whole hour reviewing one site. There's so many different details that we could cover. So for the sake of time, we're going to point out as much as we can within the time allotted. And remember, if we don't get to your site today, we'll reach out to offer you a one-on-one site review if you'd like that. And we'll also have time at the end of the show to do a Q&A session. So if you do have questions about anything that we cover, please hit the chat. Let us know. And we also have Ivana, back by popular demand. Ivana, how's it going?
It's going great.
All right, so Ivana will be reviewing your questions, letting us know what's going on. So just hit up Ivana if you have anything with that. But Ivana, we have a poll, right? That's the thing we need to get into next. So let's cue that up. So the question is, Grace, go ahead and hit us off here.
What should be the main focus of your homepage? And the two options we have here are to tell your story or to sell your products.
Interesting split there, right?
So y'all just take a minute. There are no wrong answers. Just answer how you feel, and we're going to talk about it a little bit here in a second. Hey guys, okay, so with that poll, what we're trying to get at is, I was being honest when I said there is no wrong answer.
You're right.
It's kind of a trick question. So when we get to a homepage, we want something, we talked about this a little bit last month, we want you to show your gimmick. We want you to explain what you do, what distinguishes you from all the other competitors that are doing the same thing you're doing. Sum up all the categories that you sell. Don't just show one particular product. So we'll see some more examples of that when we start getting into these sites and give you more specifics. But it looks like we have a pretty split poll result there. So again, nobody said anything wrong. We want to
both right.
Yeah,
you have to tell your story as well as your products. But oftentimes, Grace, we see one or the other, right?
Exactly, and that's not what you want.
Yeah, from a story aspect, it almost makes the store feel more informational.
Right.
We want to talk about what the brand represents, but on the flip side, we see sites that just focus product.
And we don't learn anything about who these people are.
At the cost of the story. So it's a balance, and just keep that in mind as we go forward with the first site. So can we see that?
All right, here we go.
All right, Grace, kick us off here.
All right, so the first thing that I want to jump into is this site frame. There's a lot to cover here. They're using their brand colors, which is great. But one thing we need to be wary of when using brand colors is establishing a sales funnel, because things will get lost. So we talked about this again a little bit last time for those of you that are coming back. But the view cart here almost gets lost. I don't see it because it's in that teal blue. So we would suggest picking a color that stands out among all these other colors, maybe like a yellow or a purple, and using that for your cart button, for your add to cart button, for your proceed to checkout button, just keeping all of those similar so people know when they see that color, it's just an instant sign that, hey, I'm going further down the sales funnel when I click this button.
That's right.
Another thing I want to point out is that logo. It's obviously great to have brand recognition when you come to a site, but this logo becomes problematic when you start to scroll because it actually starts hovering over everything and covering up stuff. So you want to be wary about that. You can see it on this graphic where it's covering the ring.
It's an interesting idea, right?
Yeah.
But it's like you said, it's covering up a good bit, particularly as we go further into the site. It's interesting that it's getting depth, but as you look at the site frame with the logo, with the footer, it really constricts the overall site experience with the content that we're trying to show. I've never seen a sticky footer before.
Yes.
That's a first for me.
Yes, and it's not something that we typically suggest, just because it almost makes it feel like you're looking at a PowerPoint presentation or something like that has like a little header and a footer, and all the information has to be contained within this container. And it doesn't make it feel like I want to scroll. It makes it feel like that's all that there is to it.
Right.
So having that footer there almost makes it feel like this is the end of the page and there's nothing left. And then the last thing I want to cover on SiteFrame before we start diving into this home page is those top level categories. We like to call them TLCs, and by that I mean the Paul Lishman, the home collection, leathers, furs, women's, men's, all those. So typically we suggest no more than 7. So this is a good mini, and I think there's some easy ways that they could consolidate and kind of group things together to make still a very seamless shopping experience for their customer, but it's also not so much at once and so many options to choose from. For example, they could do shop women, shop men, shop by designer, accessories and jewelry. So they can kind of split things up and group things together in a way that makes sense, but maybe not having quite that many categories.
Right.
Right. And then, so did you have anything else to add about SiteFrame?
That's right. I mean, I think it's just a matter of keeping everything in mind that you want to accomplish. There's a lot of really good ideas, a lot of thoughts, but you have to look at it in total and make some judicious decisions from there.
Right. And then, so this home page, this gets into a little bit of what we were talking about with that poll. So if you start scrolling a little bit, we'll talk about these banners in a second. But if you start scrolling, you see that all that is on this page are these banners and they're selling product. So there's nothing on this page to tell me who is Augustina's and why should I spend $4,000 with you versus with some other high-end store. Especially for such a high-end store like this, you want to establish, hey, like we're the people you come to for this stuff. We're that brand, and here's why. So, and it's also not giving you an array of everything that they do sell on their homepage. Right now, it's only jewelry when their site name is Augustina Leathers.
Right.
So,
and Grace, I want to point out too how critical it is to really nail typography, the fonts being used. You've got obviously the font and the logo, but also the serif font, I'm not sure exactly what font that is, but then you've got the sans serif, Augustina, Angel's Picks. People may not be familiar with serif or sans serif. Basically, How would you describe that for somebody uninitiated?
So serifs basically are the font with the little things on the end.
Little hooks,
So, right. Sans serif is just the straight line, nothing to it.
Right. And so we want to make sure you've got a compelling mix, and so it doesn't become too much. What we recommend is really a max of 2, certainly no more than 3 fonts overall. And sometimes we see a huge amount of fonts on the site. This site's not that bad, but certainly for the price point that they're selling the items, we really want to make sure that it conjures up the correct brand aesthetic needed to sell such high-end items.
Right. And then selling these high-end items, you want to make sure that you're marketing them to the best of your ability. So if we scroll up and look at these banners, you have these beautiful luxury images, and some that are showing like what brands they're with, but there's no call to action. There's nothing saying shop this now, shop this collection, shop these furs, shop these leathers. So simply adding a header and some subtext and a CTA would really help increase their sales, I believe.
All right, let's go further into the site.
All right, let's go to furs. So this is a product listing page, or what we like to call a PLP. And typically we love banners on these pages, but the reason that we use banners is to let people know, hey, you've arrived at the right page, you clicked this, this is where you are. And that's one thing that they're not doing. You have this, again, beautiful luxury image, but they could really benefit from having just a simple header that says furs and then some SEO text, live text. And what we mean by that is it's text that can be searchable by Google. So it's anything that Google can pick up from your site. So if it's just a little bit of text describing what people are seeing on this page and what they can expect from clicking this link, that can help your sales and help Google to pick up everything that you're selling and just make your site more profitable. So
you see how that logo is overlapping.
Yeah, and as you start scrolling, you really start seeing it on this page, how it's overlapping things.
Well, in two, Grace, I was saying about the typography on the homepage. When you're selling these high-end furs and you've got image coming soon, some of the text is kind of blanked out in different areas. It may seem minor, but all of that can add up. All of that can lower confidence that a customer has, even subliminally, right? They may not consciously say, I will not shop here because this logo is covering, but it creates an uncertainty, a little bit of a tension with the customer. And buying is all about emotion. And anything that you can do to influence that emotion positively is going to make a big impact on conversions.
Right. And something we also want to do for the customer is make the shopping experience as simple as possible. So BigCommerce has wonderful filters that you can set up to really help you find exactly what you're looking for. And Evan, I kind of want to hand it over to you a little bit here and let you talk about filtering and how this site could greatly benefit from that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If something I noticed is this, you've got page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a ton of pages in these categories. So to your point, making it easier for people to find what they're looking for. For those of you that aren't familiar, faceted search or filtered search is kind of that search that Amazon made famous. Usually checkboxes or something on the left-hand side. You could say I'm looking for, men's shirts in size medium, in color blue, price point, whatever, and it will then dynamically filter out those remaining products so you can shop for just exactly what you're looking for. In this case, I think they'd really benefit from it with so much within these category pages. They could easily add something like color or price point or brand, but BigCommerce allows for custom facets to be applied. So essentially you could do like fur type or jacket type or material or even occasion or something like that. So they could get really creative with essentially injecting these products with custom attributes and helping people find exactly what they're looking for much more quickly than having to scroll through everything.
Awesome. Yeah, couldn't have said it better. All right, I think that's mainly what we wanted to cover on this. So let's click into that first item there.
Wolfie. Grace, would you feature the Wolfie here at EYStudios?
I mean, I would wear it all the time.
How much does this thing cost? Is it?
That's the problem.
You'll see the price here.
Yes, that's the thing I wanted to talk about first.
$4,000. No, I take it back.
You don't want to buy it for me?
No, I'm an Indian giver, but we keep it very cold in the studio.
It's true.
Grace is typically seen with a napkin draped around her as she designs, but we're going to have to wait a bit on the Wolfie,
okay.
Grace. But what else are you seeing here?
But yeah, that's the main thing that I want to talk about here. So we call the area where you select quantity, color, and you add to cart, and there's the price. We call that the buy box, and that's what you want to be prominent and right, preferably above the fold when you get to the product page. And on this particular site, they're actually putting all of their product description before you even see that, which is not the best practice that we would suggest. We want that product title, that price, and that add to cart to be the first thing that you see, and then put that product description underneath that, because it's very important information, especially if I'm spending $4,000, I'm going to want to know all those product details. But I want to know how much I'm spending first before I get there. So just make it as easy as possible for the customer to add something to cart. Don't make them go searching for that add to cart button. And along those lines, the same thing we were talking about with that sales funnel color, that I would again use it here. So something that's different than all the other colors you're using on the website. Make it pop, make it stand out and have great contrast against the rest of your site so that it's the first thing that I see when I come to this page.
Yeah, and sometimes, Grace, when we put that out there, we get the question of, well, do you just not like that color? It's not a matter of not liking that color.
Yeah,
it's a matter of making sure it fits within the context. I love black. You know, my truck's black. Everything. If it's an option, I'm going to select black. But here, and let's talk about black for a second, particularly within this layout. I think, again, to support this high-end aesthetic, we've got to be very judicious about color, like you're saying about the funnel to get them into the cart there. But it's almost overwhelming. It's almost oppressive, the amount of black they've got here. Luckily, the product page itself is not on black or anything crazy like that. But when you've got huge swaths of color like that, people associate black with a high-end color, right? You're selling high-end items, so it's a natural choice here. And so we're not saying don't use black or anything like that. But again, we have to be careful in the execution. The idea is solid, but when you look at it overall, it can change at the mix. What do you think?
Yeah, use black, but just be careful when you use it, and be very intentional with color, I think is what Eric's saying. You gotta just really think about color psychology and what draws people's eye and makes them think. So, yeah, all right. Let's add this to cart so we can take a look at their cart and check out. So they are using BigCommerce Checkout. However, they have not updated to the most recent version.
Okay.
So, Evan, do you want to talk a little bit about the benefits of just staying up to date on the BigCommerce Checkout and everything that it offers?
Yeah, it looks like they're using something from the Blueprint days. So we have our theming framework today. The modern one is called Stencil. We've got an optimized one-page checkout. It has some of the same features, functionalities. You can allow checkout as a guest, or force people to register, or however you want to go about it, or log in rather. But there's moving to that would provide some major immediate benefits. So if you want to go through, can you click checkout as a guest, and we can just see what comes. Yeah, so one of the things that the optimized one-page checkout has, so things like based on IP address, it'll automatically fill in. It's doing this here, the country, United States. You've got an order summary that follows you. So on the right-hand side here, you'd have a order summary, which is basically like a snapshot of the cart. It's a nice reminder for the customer as they're coming through and choosing things like shipping options or entering in coupon codes or promotional things. You'll always see the total as you're filling things out, so there's no surprises at the end. And then as you sort of go through these different steps, I know the credit card piece is laid out really optimally. It's very clearly labeled in terms of what inputs they're looking for, and then the credit card is automatically selected based on numbers. So essentially you're just reducing steps. I think it's a much cleaner look than this is, and so probably feels a little more up to date and a little more relevant. But the additional pieces of information and even taking off a few clicks to this process, they could really help with conversion overall.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that was a good summation. All right, so with that, we're gonna move on to our second site, which is City Restaurant Supply. So we're pulling that up here right now. All right.
Guys, all right. Grace, first off, lots here, right? Lots to digest here. But the first thing I want to point out is this logo. And I give it points for the personality. And typically we don't cover logos. It's almost a sensitive subject. People don't really like talking about that too much. It's either something they're very much open to, or you cannot touch the logo.
Right.
I'm not sure how this merchant feels, but I like the personality. I like what it's conveying. The thing that I would suggest is to really just focus on the clarity. This the IES right there in the logo in particular, we could work on that in terms of the legibility. But I do, like I said, I like the personality. But when things like this, when you have a lot going on, a lot of varying text sizes, things like that, it can really be a challenge, particularly at mobile sizes. And when we get to checkout, we'll see how the logo looks a little bit larger size. Spoiler alert there. But do you agree with me on the logo? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has a lot of character and it's doing something different. But when you're designing these things, you have to think about every size that it's going to be viewed at. And that applies to web design as well. Just overall, you just got to think about when things scale down, are they going to be readable? Is it going to be viewable? Are people going to be able to understand what I'm going for? So.
All right. So what are you seeing here?
So overall, again, I want to talk about site frame first. I would say there's a little bit of a contrast issue here with that top banner. We typically like to pick a bright color or something that's like maybe that blue that they're using or a red, just to make those messages that they're trying to send pop across the page a little bit more. They're talking about their showroom. They're talking about how they're the leading distributor of restaurant supplies. But that almost gets lost just because it's on this gray background with white text and it's just not showing up enough. Additionally, those top level categories, again, they're wrapping, which is not something that we like to see.
You always want to keep your top level categories, what we call the TLC, on one row.
Yeah. Yes. So what I would suggest is, number one, pulling out Contact Us. That doesn't necessarily need to be a top level category. You can put that up there with account and gift certificates and sign in. You want to keep those the shoppable links if all possible is what we like to suggest to people. And then also putting them beneath the logo so that they have that whole length of the page to kind of spread out and take up that room.
Well, if it's going to be to the right of the logo, you've got to be very judicious about what's going to be there. I think particularly with the design of the logo, which is the reason why I tackled that first, there's a height requirement to pull that thing off as well, right? So I would hesitate, Grace, to put it underneath the logo. I see what you're saying there, but just based on that design, that could play havoc with the rest of the header if you're not careful.
You might have to move the search bar above the TLCs, and that cart. Just make room. I would never have your things wrapping.
Right, and I like the slogan, your wholesale go-to restaurant supplies and equipment. I don't like where it is. Put in that banner. That's really where a sales banner ideally should go, in my opinion. Do you agree?
Yeah, we like to keep those things for like free shipping, or if you're doing some special promotion, like say it's Black Friday, you want to call attention to that. Anything like that, we like to keep that space open for. But again, like we were saying in that poll, it's good to have like where your wholesale go-to. It's good to say that, but maybe put that in a banner, maybe put that in some SEO text like we were talking about. So we're not saying take that off your page by any means, but just maybe find a different place for it.
Well, let's go to this scroller, this product rotator here, and we've actually paused it on the live site. You can actually see it flying through really quickly, but we want to zero in on the one that we've got here up on the screen, refrigerators and freezers. We're talking about legibility on the other site. Got to talk about it here, Grace. That's pretty tough to read. What do you think? Yeah,
and I think there's some simple things that they could do. They're doing a great job with making a composite image and showing the array of things that they sell. I think that that's great. I think that the execution could have been a little better. They could have put the images all to the left side and had the text on the right side. You just never want to overlay text directly on top of the image. They could even have done maybe a simple overlay on the image so that the text stood out more. There are several things that we could try, but right now as it is, it's not readable, and therefore this banner isn't doing anything for them.
And like you said, we see the intent, right? We see that they're doing a good job, like we talked about on the last webinar so much about putting that visual summary of product. So I applaud them for doing that, right? For getting imagery that's telling that visual story. But you got to have that text working in conjunction with it. I'm just now seeing the shop now. It looked like part of the fridge there for a second.
It's hidden.
All right, let's go on. What else?
All right, let's start scrolling down the page. So one thing I do want to praise them for doing is they do a good job of summarizing the array of products that they sell. Like we were talking about with that top banner, they show that they sell food prep equipment, tabletop equipment, smallware, and as we continue to go down the page, you'll see more and more of that. So I think that overall the idea they had was great. I would watch the execution, especially on things like scale and proportion, specifically with that tabletop graphic. Just make sure that everything makes sense proportionately. Like that plate looks very large in proportion.
It could be a big plate though, you don't know.
To that napkin holder, but yeah. So that's things that we would gladly help you with here at EY when we're preparing your site. But I think overall they did a really good job of coming up with all these ideas to show, hey, we sell a lot of equipment.
Exactly. I mean, I like that they're providing, particularly for B2B customers, a good summation so that you can segment them directly into what's of interest. And then you've got the new products here. Got a little bit of a scaling issue there with the images.
Yeah. So it's just a simple issue of making sure your images are all the same size, which is something that when we design sites, we'll give you the dimensions for and make sure that all your images are in that dimension.
Right.
That way, when you start plugging your images in, you don't have this up and down effect like they're having with the text on the specific sync image right here.
Right.
And everything will be in line and look much cleaner. So that's something very simple that I think they could do that could help clean up the
You just
site.
want to create an average, right? You could have a square around the sink, but if you've got a tall rectangle around the second thumbnail there, that's just going to create that herky-jerky scaling.
Exactly. All right, so let's scroll up, and we're going to take a look at their mega menus for a second.
We actually have a customer question about mega menus that we could dive into this. Ivana, do you want to read that for us?
At what point should our business consider mega menus versus simple drop-down?
They've heard us talk about mega menus, I assume, before. This is not a simple drop-down. This has got the visual mega menus in there. And what I'd say, Grace, to answer that question is mega menus are not a good fit for everybody. Like I don't think I'd put a mega menu on the first site for Augustina Leathers. Would you? I'd keep that just pretty straightforward. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think some of their categories could have benefited from it because they had a pretty wide array of some stuff. But I really think that's the key. It's when you have a lot of products in a lot of different categories and you want a way to show or get to items quicker and show.
Particularly for B2B, right?
Exactly, right. And show everything that you sell, maybe even add a like visual element like they're doing and we've done on a lot of sites. But yeah, I think it just depends customer to customer.
It does, and what I would say, and this can apply not only to mega menus, but how you lay the site out in general. If you have a good amount of your customer base that needs a heavy amount of hand-holding, they need some advice on what type of product to get and maybe just educate themselves on the products you carry in general, telling that story visually with the mega menus, with the layouts, is really a good way to do that. And what we see so often are menus that have 30, 40, 50 links in there, and it just becomes just inexplicable. It's really hard to read through that, and your eye can gravitate towards type, just like it's doing here. You know, you've got the condiment holders and dispense. That's not a condiment holder, is it?
We're going to talk about that.
Okay, go ahead. I didn't mean to skip ahead. Go ahead.
But what Eric was saying actually leads great into what we want to talk about here. So they have so many categories and subcategories throughout these. If you can just like hover over each one kind of briefly, just so we can get an idea. So this one particular right here, this is where they're running into an issue. They have so many categories and subcategories that they have
2 rows.
That you can't even access and you can't get to because if you start scrolling, it doesn't move. So
you can't even get to
it doesn't even become a functional thing for them.
Right.
And we want it to make your business work more efficiently, not.
That is the longest mega menu, tallest I've ever seen.
So there are some things that you can definitely
do. We should do awards on the big review, Ivana. We should,
Tallest mega menu?
Right.
So there are some things we could do with this one even in particular. So things, when we have like lots of subcategories, something we like to suggest is doing a cap. So showing like bartending supplies and then having your top 5 bartending supplies and then a simple link under that says view all. And doing that for each section. That way you have enough room to display all your top categories and still have that visual element and it'd still be super visually interesting, but also effective.
Is there a number you have in mind as far as like an upper limit of links? I always think about like when you start approaching or getting over 30, that's in the danger zone. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think it depends. Like, some people might have like 10 links under one and then like 5 links under 2, and that's fine. But I would be careful and cognizant of like what you're saying. Like, don't have 10 links for every category that you have and try to fit in like 6 categories. It's not gonna.
Well, and looking like what we've got here, where it's got the salad bar Crocs, right, which is the one link compared to the ones that my first question is it possible maybe to consolidate that? I don't know if they sell a ton of salad bar Crocs, but that just seems to be a little bit off. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot of consolidating and restructuring that they could do to help themselves out.
But again, we commend you doing this,
Yeah.
right? We like that you're doing something beyond just the norm.
Yeah, and then one more thing that I wanted to talk about before we leave Mega Menus is if you hover over tabletop, I just wanted to let them know to be cognizant of the images that you're using. Make sure that they match up with the categories that you're using. Because right now we have menu holders and guest checks, but it's actually showing a plate, and the menu holders are to the left, and it says condiment holders and dispensers.
Okay.
So it's just kind of confusing to the customer, so just be careful of that.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, let's go to restaurant equipment and go to refrigeration. And we're going to pull up a product listing page, or PLP here.
We have acronyms for everything, right?
Yeah, we do. Shorthand. All right, so this is a product listing page. Again, just pointing out, being wary of the size of images because we have a little bit more of that up-down effect happening. Another thing that's happening on this site is things are just getting cut off. That whole right column is almost disappearing. I can't see.
Oh, it's cut off, yeah.
Yeah, I can't see the item at all.
Right.
So just be careful of that because your customer is losing some of your inventory when they can't see it. So just be aware of how things scale and make sure that everything is scaling effectively. But on this page, what I really wanted to focus on is how they have so many products that are very, very similar. And again, like Evan was talking about, filtering could be a major thing for these guys. I mean, you could sort by fridge type, size, finish. They have all these fridge types of bar fridges and industrial fridges and like food storage fridges. I mean, they could really, really benefit from that.
So this AmeriCooler, the one that looks the same without the thing on top, is it just a size differential there?
Yeah, it's a remote differential. So the very end, it says that there's a remote for one of them. So if we scroll up, actually want to talk about this and let Evan talk about it a little bit. BigCommerce has a compare function.
Right.
So if we click that and then we click the other compare, and we're going to scroll all the way down the page, which they don't have their compare function set up very well to where it lets you know that you have something that you've added to your list. Yeah. You might have to actually command minus to actually get the compare button to show up on the bottom right-hand corner because it's cutting off that last.
Evan, what are your thoughts here as we go through this?
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah, you can see the compare button there, and clicking on that provides a nice side by side. So that's built-in feature for to the point made earlier, for something that has very similar products with maybe small differences. It's a super useful tool. I think in this case they could benefit from making sure that button is maybe either at the top, or you could actually style those into that kind of grid view, so that by the time you've selected a couple options to compare, there's a new thing revealed, some call to action to actually go to compare, because when it's shoved at the bottom of the page, people just aren't going to find it. But if you scroll down here, you'll see, again, it's a nice feature. They all different product description and size details and everything are laid out side by side. Just makes it easier to try to figure out which one's got a remote control.
Awesome. All right. So let's click in on one of these and let's look at a product page. So their product pages are pretty standard and they're not doing a ton wrong here.
Right.
So when I come to a product page, the first things that I tell customers customers tell us that they're looking for is that product title, the price, and an add to cart button. Right. So they're doing a great job of showing the price and the product title. I would say, again, make that add to cart be a different color, make it pop more. I know for their cart, colors are actually using kind of a light blue. Maybe consider using something like that because that would pop off the page. But other than that, they're actually doing a pretty good job of keeping everything above the fold, all the important information. And then as you scroll down, they have the product description and some related products, which you can set up in BigCommerce, and is another great feature where you can display products that are similar and try to upsell or cross-sell.
Yeah, I like how there's not a lot of unused white space here. So they're doing a really good job of making sure the layout works well. You could probably tighten up that area just below the social sharing right there, so you could have the elements peek up above the fold a little bit as far as space. While we're talking about spatial elements, it may seem like a small thing, but how close the SKU is to that red price, just a little bit of spacing right there, it may seem like a small detail, but that's one thing you could do to alleviate some tension, particularly with the big red price right there. You mentioned the important use of color here, but notice how with the social sharing, you've got the Pinterest and things like that, and those pop off the page, and even though the add to cart button is big, it's gray, it's still vying for dominance against this color, right? And so even for a B2B site, even for something like this, we talked about black on the last site, or the first site, sorry, but similar dynamic, right? We want to make sure that you've got something that pops off the page like you were saying earlier, Grace.
Right, absolutely. And then one more thing I want to just mention before we leave is those buttons. Keep things similar, keep things consistent. So right now they have that add to cart, and then they have an add to quote, and then they have an add to wish list, and they're all being treated differently. Yes, you want your add to cart to be treated differently, but maybe treat those other two similarly.
Right.
Because right now we have 3 links that are basically adding something, but they're all being treated drastically differently.
Well, and we're doing a lot of B2B sites here these days, and add to quote is becoming a more common element here, and I like what you're saying about that. And just be careful about making sure that these links feel clickable, right? The add to wish list almost feels like a descriptor for add to quote versus a link into itself. Right.
All right, let's add this to cart.
Okay.
So we don't want to talk about much on here, but we do want to talk about the importance of just the small things that you can do to obviously enhance the site, and that would be scale here. So like Eric was saying, we can see this logo at its full scale and what its intention was.
That is a big logo.
It works at the scale for like looking at the logo, but we want to make it smaller so that we can
pushing down everything else.
We want to once we're at this page, we want to check out, we want to proceed. We don't want to keep our customers from moving further down that sales funnel, and you're just pushing everything below the fold. So just be very aware of the sizing of things and how that can affect a customer's journey.
Right. Speaking of the journey, what are your thoughts real quick on the red reviews tab there?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm not sure what it's going to take me to. Is it going to take me to reviews on the site? Is it going to take me to the reviews that are in my cart? I would overall not want to advertise things on this page that are going to take me away from this page, because once I'm here, I want them to make a purchase. So I would be careful about things like that.
Well, and I think with checkout in general, a lot of folks just put their logo up and call it a day. It's amazing the amount of conversions, the increase rate is making sure that people stay in the cart. Just a little bit of customization. Don't just slap your logo and call it a day.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's go to the next site, Ivana. That's Silver Fire. Okay, got that up. So we just talked about white space here. Got a lot of that going on in the header here. And when we look at the navigation, Grace, the first link is about. My first thought is, okay, this is an informational site, right? Because we're not leading off with products, but then, of course, we go directly into products. See this a good bit, right? Even on this webinar, a mix of informational and product links. Always good to separate that, call that out a little bit more. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was something we were talking about on Augustina. Just make sure that those top level categories are your shoppable links, and you can use what we call utility links, which are links that we put up towards the top, which can be things like about or contact us, or if you have any informational pages, it can be all those types of things. And actually, that's what I want to get into with this not being a BigCommerce site. They're missing out on one of the biggest features of BigCommerce, which is the My Account.
Just missing out in general, not on BigCommerce.
I know. But I'm going to let Evan talk about all the benefits of having a My Account and what that can do for you as a BigCommerce customer.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think first and foremost, the My Account or some concept of having an account or being able to create one is obviously just expected as a consumer. I know I expect it in my personal life. If I'm making a purchase from a direct website, I almost always create an account. And in BigCommerce, some of the features and benefits that come around that for a shopper is to you can go in, log in, quickly access order history, quickly access things like tracking information. If you can't find the tracking email that you got, you can log onto the site and have access to that type of information. You can also configure it as the merchant to allow, if you allow for returns, for example, then the customer could self-serve and, do that through the account management section versus having to call in or bother a chat rep. The other thing that I really like about it is really quickly reorder. So if you're selling something that tends to have, repeat buyers, then by logging in, I can view old orders and quickly repurchase items that, I've purchased in the past. The last thing I'll say is BigCommerce has this wish list concept, right? So you've maybe done this on sites where you can essentially fill up almost like a cart, but just create a wish list. I think there's some social aspects to that, so you could share it. And with an account, I can log in, create wish lists, save wish lists, share them with people, fill them up with Wolfies, for example, since I'd need somebody to buy me those. And I think it's a really nice benefit. So good call out.
Yeah, there's so many benefits of that My Account.
He's campaigning for you to get that Wolfie.
I know, I think so.
I don't appreciate that. We need a new guest.
I've been waiting to make that.
All right, so moving down the page, I want to talk about their beautiful images. They have these great images highlighting their jewelry and what they're selling. The one issue and the things they're missing, and I think that could greatly benefit them, is just adding some simple headers and some call to actions on them that link directly to these collections or these specific products.
But what great imagery.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Make it shoppable.
Yes.
That's all we're saying. It'd be super simple for them to do. They already have great imagery that draws you in. Just let people link that directly to the product.
Right.
And then as you keep scrolling, they actually do have images but link directly to sections, but it almost doesn't look clickable because the text is so small and there's still no button type or anything like that to kind of signify that it is a clickable element. So just be wary of things like that as well. And then we're going to go into necklaces. So this is their product listing page. Again, beautiful imagery. I love the hover effect, how it changes as you hover over things to a white background with a clear image. Something that I think, again, that they could do is use filtering. It can help any site, because when I'm shopping by necklaces, I'm looking at links and pendants. So as they grow, that could only help them. But as we move into the product page, so just one thing they're doing really well, and I want to praise them for it.
You like this site. I mean, you like the products,
yeah.
right?
No, I mean, I want all the products.
Right. You're a pendant purchaser. Yeah.
Right. I mean, they've convinced me. But definitely they're doing a great job of that sales funnel color that we've been talking about on the other sites that they weren't executing. They got that bright green, and it's the first thing you see when you get to this page. The one thing that they're not doing, and I think that this site needs because it is such a small store, is they need those product details. They need the differentiators explaining why I should buy from you rather than somewhere else. And they have no description text on this
at
site.
all. If
no.
you scroll down,
it's
just the title and that's price,
so
and that's it.
Something they could greatly benefit from. They could also benefit from BigCommerce review system that comes out of the box with BigCommerce and can help. Can really help.
Well, I like what you're saying about some added content. I love the large image here. I like the way you can magnify right there. But what I'm thinking, Grace, is just a small description. You don't have to put a really long description. I wouldn't do that at all. But just like a couple of lines of text talking about what's special about this pearl pendant.
Right.
And like you're saying, something underneath the add to cart to really nail those unique selling propositions. There's another acronym, USP, right there, unique selling propositions that are right there underneath the add to cart. Maybe talk about something related to your shipping policy, returns, a way to contact you, whatever it is to really boost that confidence that a customer has in your particular brand.
Yeah.
So I think those are always good ideas.
Absolutely. All right, so with that, we're going to transition to our last site today, which is osmotics.com. Again, we're going to cover that site frame.
There it is.
First off.
Okay.
So one of the first things that I want to cover here, again, like what we were talking about, they have a lot of informational links in their top level categories, and their shoppable links are all actually hidden within a shop drop down, which is something we're seeing more and more of.
I don't like
lately.
that trend.
I don't either.
Yeah.
You want to make it easier for people to shop your site, not create more clicks for them to shop your site.
let's touch on that for a second. So this is Osmotics is the brand, right?
Right.
These are their products, and so they have just kind of similar to our poll question about telling the story and talking about the products. You know, they have the task to explain about the brand. You know, this being the site where all this originates, and so we've got to do it in a way that makes sense for the consumer, but also lets them tell that narrative. But putting it all under the shop, at the end of the day, you're there to sell products, right? You can still tell that story, but I would put the informational link somewhere else. But like we're about to get into, there's a lot there with the informational that we like, right? That we want to make sure doesn't get hidden in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to that homepage and let's talk about these banners for a second. Eric, what do you think about banners?
Well, a lot of movement going on, even within, we typically don't see a lot of that these days where you've got motion in the particular slide. That takes me back to some sites back in the day. I don't see that a lot, but there's a lot of motion. I think the big rule there, Grace, is for motion, you really want to make sure that that's done at the customer's behest, right? If you have a lot of moving elements and the customer's not doing anything to impact that, that's where it can be off-putting, right? And the idea here, I think, it's an honest one, right? You're trying to engage the customer with some exciting things, but it comes back to what are we really trying to nail about this brand? I mean, when you're talking about, you know, creams, lotions that you're applying, you know, you've got to really amp up the trust factor. It's not about entertainment. It's not about, you know, dazzling people. It's all about making sure that your trust is there and that you're making sure you're dealing with a brand that's reputable. I love the logo. I think that what I'm seeing right there is conveying that story. But when you get to graphics like this, in my opinion, it can undercut it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
Grace?
absolutely. And I think that goes along with the telling the story, explaining the gimmick. As we start to scroll on this page, you actually see that they're, again, just showing a bunch of featured products. And I think when looking through the site, I discovered something that I think is really, really neat. They have this thing, if you go under Get Started, and then you click that, your skincare solution, they have this thing that lets you basically go in and say, here are all my problems. And then it'll spit out all their products that are perfect and custom tailored for you. And I think that right there is what sets them apart from everybody.
This is cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like this. Yeah.
And that should be what they're leading with on their homepage. Their banner should be something about fine skincare products that are tailored to you. We custom make these products for people with your problems.
Do I have expression lines?
Do you need some of that?
Well, I like my expression lines. I don't want to get rid of them.
You don't want to get rid of them?
No.
Distinguishing.
Now, Evan, on the other hand, his expression lines are very off-putting, you know. But
yeah, I've already ordered some creams.
Right, but we'll order you stock in Osmotics, Evan, to fix that. But
right.
Go ahead.
I'll cover them with my Wolfie.
That's right.
Just hide.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think this is one of those great things that will really set them apart from their competitors, and that's what you should be leading with on your homepage. Don't bury that. Say that out, say it loud, say it proud. Put it on the homepage.
This is a great feature. I love how it's solving, you know, a problem. You know, it's got that there and it's clear. And like you said, the queue up to this, just having a link for Get Started really doesn't tell what's cool about this page. Right. And so the homepage is a good opportunity to visually suggest that. So I would take full advantage of this. Great idea, but let's serve up that idea a little bit better.
Absolutely. All right, so let's dig into the site a little bit more, and let's go to shop products and anti-agers. Okay. All right, so it's going to pull up the product listing page, and this is, again, an example of where they're doing a banner that's great. I think, Eric, me and you were talking about how they should possibly flip this header and the subheader.
People read left to right, then top to bottom, and so what is at the top left gets looked at first. And so having the description right there with the title to the right, again, it may seem like a small thing, but leading off with anti-agers would be the way to go.
And then another thing is making sure that this text isn't a part of your image.
Right.
If possible, making sure it is that live text so that it is helping your SEO and making you be able to be found on Google and boosting your site.
And that's going to work responsibly, right? Within mobile, because when you have this as a fixed element, that may or may not work in your favor for mobile.
It might not be readable when you start scaling down.
Right.
So then if we just start scrolling, they're actually using the compare feature here. We won't get into that, but just noting that they are using it as well. So they have some badging that they're using, which is great, and we suggest doing. It can set things apart if you have items that are on sale, if you have best sellers, if you have like a featured item. It can be great to kind of like call things out and make people create interest in that specific product. But one thing I wanted to note too is to just be careful about your imagery that you're using here. Try to keep it consistent, because right here we have all these images that are on a white background, and then you have this one product that's standing out because it's an example of what the product does. And that's great to include once we get to the product level, but on this level, I would try to keep it as consistent as possible so it just stays clean. All right, so let's actually click into that one that's different. Or this is fine. So just when you're on this page, this is an example of what I was talking about. They have great images of showing like how the product can be used and how the difference that it creates. That's great to include that. Again, be careful of those image sizes, because when I start scrolling through this, those arrows jump, and it makes me as a user have to go up and down and try to reach those arrows to scroll through and see all the images.
Right,
so just
good catch.
simply creating those to be the same size will make it a more seamless experience for the customer. And then over in the buy box, this is actually one we haven't looked at as much, and it has configurable options. And what we mean by that is it has sizes. So they can actually go in and choose size. For example, that would be something else on another site would be like color of shirts. You could choose color. So this is one of the first ones we've looked at today that actually has that.
So Grace, we have a question that I think applies while we're here on the buy box of the product page. The question is, when deciding on a sales funnel color, they've heard us talk about being consistent with that.
Right.
Should I keep our branding in mind, or should we make it as contrasting as possible?
No, I would not say as contrasting as possible. I would say keep branding in mind. Use a color that aligns with your brand, but that you don't use within your brand a lot. So it'll look like it's a part of your site, but it's not something that's going to stick out like a sore thumb.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hope that answers your question. Yeah. Thank you for that question.
And so along with that, again, on this site, they're not using that sales funnel button like they could be. This site's purple, so it could be a blue, it could be a pink, So just take a color that would go with that purple and that white that they're using consistently throughout the site, but just not actually the same color and not the black that's going to recede.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. But lots of good info, and it's clear, right, the options that they're presenting.
Yes. And one thing, again, I want to talk about with BigCommerce is they have this subscribe and save. So BigCommerce has the ability for you to set subscriptions that will ship out. Evan, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Pardon me, was taking a sip of water just when you asked. Yeah, so we natively out of the box don't actually offer a subscribe feature. We feel like other companies have solved this really well, folks like Chargeify or Abilia, several different options out there. So what we do is make it really easy to layer those tools in. So basically we just give merchants the freedom to figure out which one of these works, best for me. On the low end, you have, more simple, obviously more cost-effective solutions that basically say, look, I can subscribe, save as a shopper. I want one of these every month. You're off to the races. The more expensive options, you get into like texting features and a lot more heavyweight account management features. So whatever you can find that's sort of fits your needs for the subscribe and save feature, BigCommerce will integrate into it if a commercial integration doesn't already exist, and likely it does. But obviously the subscription thing is huge. Customers like it, drives loyalty, builds some predictive revenue for you as a merchant, right? Because you've got some insight into what velocity is looking like, maybe even a year out. So a lot of good options for choosing a solution with BigCommerce.
Yeah, they have great options for all kinds of things that he would be happy to help you with, I'm sure. So let's add this item to the cart and take a quick look at the cart. So the one thing that I want to point out on this cart page is BigCommerce has the ability to add an ad or some type of section at the top where you can advertise something. So here they're actually advertising spend $12 more and they'll throw in a free gift, which is a great thing to advertise. I would just say be wary of how you're doing it because they're using such dominant color and so many colors that it's a little bit distracting, and it's also kind of big and pushing down the rest of my cart. So I think that that's a great thing to be able to use. You could use that for, they could be advertising their subscription services, they could be advertising some sale that's coming up, like whatever it is, but just be wary of how you're using that space. You don't want to draw people away from the page necessarily, so just make sure you're using that space effectively.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of, like we keep saying, make sure you're cognizant of that flow. It's the first thing they're seeing, and so that next steps are clearly outlined. So that they know exactly where to go. And that's something we see so often is within checkouts. It's not 100% clear, so that clarity is one of the biggest things that you can do to avoid cart abandonment increases. But we appreciate these 4 sites volunteering for the big review. And Ivana, we've got some next steps. If you have any additional questions, whether you got your site reviewed or if you didn't, or if you'd like a one-on-one site review, you can reach out to us at info@EYStudios or call us up 678-402-6378. And we want to queue up the next big review. Mark your calendar. March 25th, 2020 is when our next webinar is scheduled. We'll have another big commerce personality. Hopefully not Evan. Evan wore out his welcome.
Oh my God.
You know, but maybe a year from now. But
I'll have my own webinar by then.
Yeah, he's got to buy me a Wolfie to make up for this performance. But no, Evan, in all seriousness, we appreciate you being part of this. You're a valuable partner to us and a huge addition to Big Commerce. We appreciate you being here. Any final words you'd want to put?
Yeah, none for me other than obviously happy if anybody that's out there listening would like to learn more about Big Commerce. You can contact me via email. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just would be happy to help figure out if it's a good fit or not. Otherwise, Eric, Grace, really appreciate you having me. Thanks so much. A lot of fun.
Evan, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Appreciate you being here as well as everybody else for the big review. Have a good rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon.